Okay, let us start with the shock. In 1950, Venezuela was the fourth richest country in the world by GDP per capita. Fourth in the world. After the United States, Switzerland, and New Zealand, Venezuela was twice as rich as Chile, 4 times richer than Japan, 12 times richer than China, richer than Germany, richer than France, richer than almost all of Europe. GDP per capita was $7,424 in 1950. For comparison, Japan was $1,873, Germany $4,281, China $614. Venezuela was not just rich, it was insanely rich. Caracas was called the Miami of South America. Skyscrapers, cars everywhere, the best restaurants in the region, European immigration, everyone wanted to live in Venezuela. By 1982, when I was born, I was not there then. But by 1982, Venezuela was still the richest large economy in Latin America. The richest. Where did such wealth come from? Oil, black gold. Venezuela discovered oil in the 1920s. By the 1950s, it was one of the largest exporters in the world. In 1960, it became one of the founders of OPEC, the organization that controls global oil prices. The 1970s, the Arab oil embargo, prices rose fourfold. Venezuela was swimming in money. Income per capita was the highest in Latin America. Workers in Venezuela earned more than in any neighboring country. The government spent oil money on everything: free healthcare, free education, subsidies for food, transport, housing. Universities, hospitals, and roads were built. Literacy levels rose. Social welfare programs worked excellently. The country functioned as a democracy. Not perfect. Corruption existed, problems existed, but elections were held, votes were counted, power changed peacefully. Against the background of the rest of Latin America, with its dictators and military juntas, Venezuela looked like a model of stability. But there was one problem. A huge problem that nobody noticed while things were good. Venezuela depended on oil by 95%. The entire economy was one product. Oil up, the country is rich. Oil down, the country is poor. They produced nothing else. Industry was not developed. Why, if oil could buy everything needed? Agriculture died. Importing food was cheaper than growing it. Economists call this the Dutch disease or the resource curse. When a country has one extremely profitable resource, all other sectors of the economy die. Talented people go into oil, not into science or business. The government does not develop infrastructure for other sectors. Why? Money flows from oil. This is a time bomb. While oil prices are high, everything is fine. When they fall, collapse. And in the mid-1980s, prices fell. The oil glut of the 1980s, prices collapsed. In 1970, a barrel of Venezuelan oil cost $2.05. After the Arab embargo of 1973, it rose to $9.30. By 1982, about $30. By 1986, it fell to $10. Venezuela's revenues collapsed. GDP fell on average by 1.3% per year from 1979 to 1983. Unemployment jumped to 20%, a record level. Inflation was 15% per year. In 1989, inflation reached 84%. The government accumulated $33 billion of external debt, trying to maintain living standards when oil money ran out. The IMF demanded harsh austerity in exchange for a loan. Food subsidies were cut. Food prices soared. Transport prices rose several times over. People took to the streets. Looting and riots began, known as the Caracazo, the capital uprising. The government imposed a curfew and suspended civil liberties. Hundreds of people were killed by the police and the army. Venezuela went from the richest country in the region to a troubled economy in 10 years. By 1998, GDP per capita was at the level of 1963, a rollback of 35 years. The purchasing power of the average salary was 1/3 of the level of 1978. 66% of the population fell below the poverty line by 1995. This was a country that 15 years earlier had been richer than Europe. And against this background of chaos, corruption, and popular anger, a man appears who promises to change everything. A revolutionary, a populist, a socialist, Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez, a former military officer who led a failed military coup in 1992. He went to prison. He came out 2 years later as a popular hero. In 1998, he was elected president with 56% of the vote on the platform of the Bolivarian Revolution. He promised to end corruption, help the poor, and use the country's oil wealth for the people, not for the elite. And you know what? At first, it worked. Oil prices began to rise in the 2000s, from $10 per barrel in 1999 to more than $100 in 2008. Venezuela was swimming in money again. Chavez launched social programs called the Bolivarian Missions: free healthcare, free education, subsidized food, housing for the poor. Poverty fell from 49% in 1999 to 28% by 2010. This is a fact. Inequality declined. The Gini coefficient, a measure of income inequality, fell from 0.495 in 1998 to 0.39 in 2011. Venezuela was second only to Canada in income equality in the Western Hemisphere. Literacy rose to 95%. The United Nations recognized achievements in reducing poverty. But there was a problem, a huge problem. All of this was financed by oil. And Chavez did not just spend the money, he methodically destroyed the country's ability to earn it. Policy number 1, nationalization of everything. From 2003 to 2012, Chavez nationalized more than 1,000 companies. I'm not joking. More than 1,000. He started with agriculture. He expropriated 6 million hectares of land from wealthy landowners and distributed it to peasants. Sounds fair? Food production fell by 75% over 2 decades, while the population grew by 33%. Then telecommunications. He nationalized KNTV, the largest telephone company. He bought Verizon's stake for $572 million. After nationalization, accusations of censorship began. Then electricity. He nationalized power plants owned by AES Corporation for $740 million. After that, regular blackouts began. In 2011, electricity rationing was introduced. In 2013, 70% of the country was plunged into darkness, 14 out of 23 states without power for the entire day. Then oil. In 2007, he completed the nationalization of the oil sector, taking control from foreign companies in the Orinoco Belt, the largest oil field in the world. Cement. He nationalized plants owned by Cemex, Holcim, and Lafarge. After nationalization, cement production fell by 60%. Kilns were shut down. Venezuela began importing cement from Colombia. Gold, steel, banks, supermarkets, tourism, glass, agriculture, transport, media, everything came under state control. In 1998, the country had 14,000 industrial companies. By 2011, 9,000 remained. By 2016, 4,000. Two-thirds of businesses either went bankrupt or fled the country. Why? Because nationalization kills incentives. State companies hired 3 to 4 times more people than needed, political appointments instead of competence. Investment fell to zero. Technical expertise disappeared. At the oil company PDVSA, Chavez carried out purges. He fired thousands of qualified engineers and managers and replaced them with politically loyal people who had no idea how to extract oil. The result? Oil production fell from 3.5 million barrels per day in 1998 to 2.6 million in 2013. This, despite Venezuela having the largest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia. Venezuela began importing light oil to mix with the heavy oil from the Orinoco. A country with the largest oil reserves buys oil. Absurd. Policy number 2, price controls. From 2003, Chavez introduced price controls on food, medicine, and essential goods. The logic was to make things affordable for the poor. The result was shortages. Companies could not sell at a profit at state prices, so they stopped production or sold on the black market. Supermarkets were empty. Lines of 5 to 6 hours to buy flour. The army guarded stores. Restrictions were introduced. People could shop only on certain days of the week based on fingerprint scans. Policy number 3, currency controls. In 2003, Chavez introduced currency exchange controls. He fixed the bolivar to the dollar at an artificially overvalued rate. The goal was to prevent capital flight. The result was corruption on a trillion scale. Those with connections received dollars at the official rate and sold them on the black market at 10 to 50 times higher. Officials and friends of the president enriched themselves on the difference. Businesses could not obtain dollars for imports. Production stopped. Inflation accelerated. By 2013, the year of Chavez's death, inflation was a stable 20% per year. GDP grew from $97 billion in 1999 to $372 billion in 2012, but this was entirely due to high oil prices, not real economic growth. Dependence on oil increased from 80% of exports in 1999 to 96% in 2012. Venezuela became even more vulnerable to oil prices than before Chavez. Corruption flourished. Murders tripled from 6,000 in 1999 to 24,763 in 2013. Caracas became the most dangerous city in the world, with more murders than Baghdad during the Iraq War. And all this time, Chavez was printing money to finance social programs. Budget deficits were covered not by taxes, not by reforms, but simply by printing bolivars. In 2013, Chavez died of cancer. His successor, Nicolás Maduro, inherited a delayed economic time bomb, and 1 year later, it exploded. Nicolás Maduro became president in April 2013 after Chávez's death. A former bus driver, a political protege of Chavez, no charisma, no economic education, no support like Chavez had. And exactly 1 year later, the apocalypse began. The year 2014. Oil prices fell from more than $100 per barrel to $50. Half of Venezuela's income disappeared in a matter of months. Any normal country would have cut spending, carried out reforms, and attracted investment. Maduro? He continued spending the same way. Social programs, an inflated state apparatus, subsidies, everything continued. There was not enough money. The solution? Print bolivars. The central bank turned on the printing presses and began printing currency at 20 to 30% per month. Inflation exploded. 2014, 69%, the highest in the world. 2015, 181%, the highest in the country's history at that time. 2016, 800%. In November 2016, Venezuela entered hyperinflation. Monthly inflation exceeded 50% for 30 consecutive days. Venezuela became the 57th country in world history with official hyperinflation. But that was only the beginning. 2017, inflation of 4,000%. 2018, 130,000, 60%, 130,000%. 2019, estimates of up to 10 million percent per year. The numbers are so insane that they are hard to comprehend. What does 130,000% inflation mean? It means that if in the morning you could buy a loaf of bread for 1,000 bolivars, by the evening it costs 2,000. The next day, 5,000. A week later, 50,000. Stores stopped putting price tags on goods. Prices changed several times a day. Sellers simply named the price at the register. Wages lost value within hours. Gross domestic product collapsed from $372 billion in 2012 to $80 billion in 2018, a contraction of 80% in 6 years. This was worse than the Great Depression in the United States, worse than Zimbabwe, one of the worst economic collapses in peacetime in the history of humanity. Gross domestic product per capita fell from $12,700 in 2012 to $1,600 in 2020, a decline of 88%. The country rolled back 70 years. Oil production collapsed from 2.6 million barrels per day in 2013 to less than 1 million by 2020. A country with the largest oil reserves in the world could not produce oil. Why? Because PDVSA was completely destroyed. No investment, no maintenance, no expertise. Equipment broke down, wells were shut, skilled workers left the country. Hunger became a reality. A study in 2017 showed that 73% of Venezuelans lost an average of 9 kilograms of body weight due to malnutrition. In 2018, the figure grew. The average weight loss was 11 kilograms in 1 year. In 2018, a survey showed that 79% of Venezuelans said they could not regularly afford food. Children died of hunger in hospitals. People searched through garbage. Hospitals had no medicines, no soap, no antibiotics. Surgeries were canceled due to a lack of supplies. Infant mortality increased by 30% in 1 year. Diseases that had been eradicated, malaria and diphtheria, returned. The poverty rate by 2017 was 87%. 87% of the population below the poverty line. This was a country that in 1950 was richer than Germany. Crime skyrocketed. Caracas became the most dangerous city in the world. The murder rate was around 200 per 100,000 people. The World Health Organization considers 10 per 100,000 an epidemic. In Venezuela, it was 20 times higher. Electricity meant regular blackouts. In 2019, the entire country plunged into darkness for a week, a nationwide blackout. No water because pumps do not work without electricity, no communications, no refrigerators. Food rotted, hospitals ran on generators. And people began to leave, a mass exodus. From 2014 to 2024, more than 8 million people left the country, out of a population of 28 million, almost 1/3 of the country, the largest migration crisis in the history of Latin America. Where to? Colombia, Peru, Chile, Brazil, the United States, Spain, anywhere that would accept them, on foot across borders. Families with children walked hundreds of kilometers. Professionals, doctors, engineers, teachers worked on the streets selling candy. The government denied the crisis. Maduro blamed an economic war by the United States and the opposition. This is sabotage, sanctions, an imperialist conspiracy. Yes, there were United States sanctions, but they began in 2017 to 2019, while the collapse began in 2014. Sanctions worsened the situation, but they did not cause the crisis. The real cause was socialism, plus the oil curse, plus corruption, plus incompetence. In 2021, Maduro finally acknowledged reality. Hyperinflation was out of control. He lifted currency controls, allowed the use of dollars, and privatized some companies. The economy stabilized slightly. Inflation fell to only 59% in 2024. Gross domestic product began to grow, 5% in 2023, a forecast of 8% in 2024. But this was a recovery from a catastrophically low base. Now, January 2026, Venezuela is in a political crisis. The elections of July 2024 were falsified. Maduro declared victory, but the opposition has evidence that their candidate won. The United States, Europe, and neighboring countries did not recognize the result. And 3 days ago, the 2nd of January 2026, news shocked the world. The United States conducted a military operation and captured Maduro and his wife. Trump announced that the United States would govern Venezuela until a safe transition of power. What happens next? No one knows. Chaos, instability, possibly civil war. But the lesson of Venezuela is clear. Oil wealth without diversification equals vulnerability. Socialism without market mechanisms equals collapse. Nationalization without competence equals destruction. Printing money instead of reforms equals hyperinflation. Authoritarianism without checks and balances equals catastrophe. Venezuela in 1950 was the fourth richest country in the world. In 2020, it was poorer than in the 1920s. From richest to poorest in 70 years, this was not a natural disaster. This was not a war. This was the choice of politicians, the choice of an economic model, the choice to ignore reality in favor of ideology. And millions of ordinary people paid the price with hunger, poverty, and ruined lives. This is what happens when a country relies on one resource, one commodity, one idea, and refuses to adapt when the world changes. Venezuela is a warning to the entire world.